we've had Jannik Sinner returning to training. He's obviously still serving his 3-month ban. His official date that he's returning is the 5th of May, so not far off. But since the 13th of April, he has been allowed to resume official training activity, which means he's allowed to practice with other professional players, etc. And he's been having a hit with Jack Draper recently as well. So seen a few photos of them and videos of them hitting at well, in the south of France, Beausoleil, Monte Carlo, obviously, which had the Masters last week. So yeah, getting some nice practice in for Draper as well, hitting with the world number one. And well, looks like Sinner's obviously shaping up nicely for his return. We did have some comments on Sinner at the same time this week. Serena Williams has been kind of interviewed about well, not just Sinner, but she was, giving her views to Time magazine and asked about Jannik Sinner's ban. I don't know what you guys made of the comments, but she said if it had been her in his situation, failing those drug tests, she would have got 20 years of a ban. That's how she worded it. And she said she would have got 20 years. And let's be honest, I would have had Grand Slams taken away from me. What did you make of her comments there? In light of that being asked about the Sinner sort of doping case.
I think it's an interesting comment. I do think that there was a huge amount of scrutiny on her, some of her TUEs that she had over the years when she wasn't particularly well during slams, for example. And I do think that they've really been kind of very widely publicized. I think if she had failed a test, it would have been huge repercussions, and I think the institutions would have jumped on her. I think she's right. I think when you are that level of a champion, you are held to a higher standard than you should be. But I think this is more that her in particular, it would be different. And she did say when it came to Simona Halep that 8 sounds better, and people thought that was referring to the fact that if Halep was banned for drugs, for failing drug tests, that then she would have had 8 Wimbledon titles. So it's interesting she made those comments. She did say at the same time, weirdly and oddly, I can't help but think about Maria. That's Maria Sharapova. All this time, I can't help but feel for her. So I think it's very interesting. It seems like she's kind of she's outside of that world, but she still is having a comment on it. And I'm not sure that there's a consistent view. I think she's giving her honest opinions that she thinks she's always been held to a higher degree of scrutiny. But it's interesting that, it's thawed with Sharapova saying she feels for her.
Do you think, just on the kind of Serena Williams, like that level of player, let's just say, for argument's sake, looking at current players, Novak Djokovic was in the same situation. Do you feel like he would have been treated differently to Jannik Sinner on a level that, as Serena's suggested, it would have been more harsh and extreme, and we would have got into conversations like taking like Grand Slams away, for example?
That's very tricky to answer. I'm just jumping in here, but I think it depends, and it has depended on who you are, but also whether you're a female or a male player. I mean, Agassi wrote in his book about cover-ups that happened about some things that he did that he's not particularly proud of, obviously. And when you are that level, there is a lot of interest in covering these things up. So I think probably you'd have to say that it would be quite similar because, I mean, he is the number one. Djokovic is not the number one at the moment. I think although Djokovic's legacy is so much bigger, the same institutions would be looking to minimize the damage it would have on the sport.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, because I always think
certain time and place. But the arrangements and the setups different at different stages of
taking different things and all sorts, right? It's hard to draw comparisons. But what did you think?
I just feel like with Djokovic, there's like so much hysteria about like that Australian Open deportation, not being able to play. I don't know.
I mean, if we open up that one, it does depend on whether we are believers that there was a failed test or not. There's so many conspiracies you can go in there. But in terms of Jannik returning, he hasn't been able to play with any professional players. No one who's registered as a professional player. So the first hit he had with someone was Berrettini earlier in the week, now hitting with Jack. I hadn't really thought about the impact that could have on his tennis because you're not going to be playing against the best of the best. Your practice is going to be impacted by that. But from what you saw, did you think he looked pretty good? Or do you think a bit more work to do?
Couldn't he have found someone who was formerly a professional player that's now retired, that's no longer registered? We don't know exactly who he might have
Dominic
got out of
Thiem.
the cupboard.
Oh, Dominic Thiem,
Dominic Thiem,
maybe.
he was too
Well-
busy. He was too busy doing coin tosses and driving the nice car onto the tennis court for Zverev.
Who else could it have been? Do we think he could have called upon? Ooh,
Not sure. I think he did. I did think he looked good, and I do wonder, like the amount of time this ban has been. Like, I'm not a tennis player, and I don't know if
you're a paddle player.
I'm a paddle player, but I don't know if like this equates to how much kind of rustiness. But I don't expect it. I feel like it's more the match competition and like that feeling, maybe the
Sharpness.
that maybe will take time. I think ability wise, and he looked pretty good when he was rallying with Draper, but that match scenario, maybe that will take a little bit more time.
And Nadal, I mean,
think-
he's come back, hasn't he? And won things almost immediately, and that was from injury, and Sinner's not injured. So I imagine that would also help.
It might be,
He'll be well
you know,
rested,
Yeah.
won't he? You know, he'll be fit as a fiddle.
it might be, you know, like again, it just shows, you know, we can look at how good he is in terms of like how quickly he bounces back. I think it's another, you know, it's almost an odd situation, but we can really see how good he is if we're thinking, right,
Yeah.
he's been off the court for X amount of time. Can he come back and go win Rome, win the French Open?
Another mountain to climb. It will be fascinating when it happens. And I think, final question on this topic, are we looking forward to him returning? Because I think I actually am now. I think I'm of the mindset that it is strange not having all of the best players there. I don't think the ban should have been less. But I'm also thinking I'd quite like an Alcaraz Sinner final in Monte Carlo that didn't happen. I'd quite like a few more of those clashes that just make the draw a bit juicier and those semi-finals a bit more interesting.
Yeah, I think it adds another layer to the dimension, and it is a bit weird having a world number one that's not
He's in
playing
a
and
private club
present.
somewhere.
It's just sort of, you know, at the top, but it doesn't appear or give any appearances. So yes, I think it'll be good. I'm really curious to see how he'll transition back to the circuit, and perhaps those early days is where other players will have the most chance and hope against him. So we shall
Especially
see.
if he draws Jack Draper. Could be interesting.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Draper can get some insight into that.
Do you think he'll have a target on his back in terms of like, you know, players will be extra motivated like against the world number one because of what's happened?
Quite potentially. Yeah.
Might not be the same though as some previous ones. So I think there is a lot of feeling that you can choose to believe everything that Sinner said, and that the nature of the ruling is that they've minimized the amount of fault that exists there, and they did obviously abscond him previously before this ban came. So I think for a lot of people, they will be looking to move on quite quickly, and I don't think they'll see it as a victory over a doper. I'm not sure that's how they would frame it in the same way that, you know, Eugenie Bouchard versus Maria Sharapova.
Yeah.
I mean, that made for some particularly interesting clashes and contests.
I mean, all we need is just a nice, relaxing, calming Jannik Sinner, Nick Kyrgios round one in Rome. That would be just easing back into it.
I mean, blockbuster.
I was just waiting for Bouchard, Joel's impression of Bouchard.
I'm not going to do that
he's
again.
Brought out
Do you want
Come on,
me to-
Joel, one
Yes,
more
go
time.
on, please.
She's a cheater.
There we go. You heard it
I
here
like
first.
it. Excellent.